I want to open with something that doesn't get said enough in spaces like this one. And I'm saying it because it's true, not because it's a nice way to begin. The loyalty of the people who come back here, reading after reading, even when life is complicated and the answers aren't clean and the situation hasn't resolved the way they hoped, that loyalty tells me something about the kind of people you are. You don't give up on understanding. You don't settle for the surface version of things. That's rarer than it sounds, and I'm genuinely honored to be part of the process. Now let's get into it. Because what's present in Virgo's reading today has an edge to it that I don't want to soften. There's a very specific thing that happens to bread dough when a baker stops working it too soon. It looks finished. From the outside, it has the right shape, the right texture, the right appearance of something that's ready, but the gluten hasn't fully developed. The structure underneath hasn't been worked to its proper tensile strength, and when you bake it, when the heat comes and the real test begins, it collapses, not dramatically, just fails to hold, fails to become what it was capable of becoming if the work had been done properly. Something in your situation has been stopped too soon, not by you. That's what I need to establish clearly before I go any further, because the reading is very specific about where the interruption came from. You did not stop working this. You showed up. You brought what you said you would bring. You loved in the way you said you would love. Not perfectly, because nobody does, but genuinely, with the particular seriousness that Virgo brings to everything that actually matters. You did not walk away from this half finished. Someone else did. And they are now living in the gap between what they thought they were choosing and what they actually got, between the relief they expected to feel when they stepped back and the reality of what stepping back actually produced, which is not relief, not peace, not the clean, unburdened version of their life that they perhaps imagined was waiting for them on the other side of the distance they created. What they got is the particular daily grinding awareness of something unfinished. Welcome to Virgo's reading. I want to look at what's actually happening with this person right now, because I think you deserve more than a vague reassurance that things aren't over. You deserve specifics. You deserve the actual texture of what's moving in them and why it matters and what it means for what comes next. What I'm picking up is a person in a kind of suspended animation they didn't anticipate. They made a choice or failed to make a choice, which is its own kind of choosing, and they expected that choice to carry them somewhere new, to a different emotional landscape, to some version of their life that felt less complicated or less demanding or less exposed to the particular risk that loving you requires. Because loving you does require something. You are not a low stakes person to love. You don't operate at the surface. You bring depth and you expect depth in return, not as a demand, but as a baseline, as the only register in which you actually know how to be present, and not everyone is ready for that, even when they think they are. This person thought they were ready, then discovered they weren't, then made a decision based on that discovery that they have been reconsidering ever since. Here's what's specific. They haven't moved, not in the way they expected to move. Emotionally, they are not in a different place. The distance they created physically, or conversationally, or in terms of contact and availability, that distance is real, but it hasn't produced the internal distance they were counting on. They are not, as they perhaps hoped they would be by now, in some new chapter that has largely processed and metabolized what happened between you they are still in it, still thinking about specific things you said, still running particular conversations back through their mind, not the arguments or the hard moments necessarily, but the ordinary ones, the unremarkable exchanges that turned out to carry more weight than their surface suggested, still noticing in the quiet hours that no one around them has access to, that something is absent from their daily life that they cannot adequately fill with anything else. I need to say something about the game dynamic because it's in the title and it's the most important thing in this reading, and I don't want to arrive at it sideways. I want to walk directly toward it. Your love is not a game. That sounds simple. It sounds like something anyone would agree with in theory. But what I'm looking at in this reading suggests that the specific situation you're in has involved at some point and in some form your love being treated as if it were not maliciously necessarily, not with a calculated intention to misuse what you offered, but with a casualness, an assumption of availability, a taking for granted that functions identically to disrespect regardless of whether it was intended as such. There's been an assumption that you would wait, that your feelings were stable enough, your investment deep enough, your nature patient enough, that the timeline of reciprocation could be extended indefinitely without meaningful consequence, that you were a fixed point they could navigate away from and return to at will, and that the point would remain fixed regardless of how long they were away or how much the navigation cost you. That assumption is the game, even when no one named it as one. And what the reading is showing me, what I feel with a clarity that is unusual even for a reading with this much energy in it, is that you are done being the fixed point. Not loudly, not with a declaration or a confrontation or a dramatic withdrawal of access. Something quieter and more permanent than any of that. Something has settled in you. A decision that isn't an event so much as a conclusion reached through the accumulation of everything you've observed and experienced and processed, landing finally in a place of stillness. You know what you're worth. Not as a performance of self-worth, not as a thing you're trying to convince yourself of as a simple factual knowledge that lives in your body and doesn't require external confirmation to be true. And that knowledge is changing your posture. Even if the change is not yet visible on the outside, even if nothing in your circumstances has technically altered, something in how you're holding this is different. And the person on the other side of the distance can feel it on some level, even if they can't name what's changed. That's why they're unsettled. That's what's accelerating whatever is moving in them. Not a new strategy on your part, not a deliberately executed withdrawal designed to provoke a response. The real thing, the genuine shift that happens when someone finally, actually, at the cellular level, stops waiting for someone else to decide their value for them. Let me look at the letting them come to you piece, because I feel it needs more than a strategic framing. I don't want this to read as a tactic. I want to give you the real version of what this means. Letting them come to you is not a move in a game. If it were a move in a game, it would be just another variation of the thing we're trying to get out of the transactional, strategic management of feeling that substitutes for actual presence. That's not what this is. What this is something simpler and more honest. It's you refusing to do the work that isn't yours to do. You have already done your work in this situation. You have already shown up, already been honest, already offered what you had to offer with the consistency and care that is characteristic of the way you love when you love seriously. You have already extended yourself. You have already made yourself available in the ways that mattered. Whatever happened after that, whatever distance exists now, whatever Unfinished business sits between you. The creation of that distance was not your failure to try hard enough. So the work of closing it is not yours to initiate. That's the truth underneath the instruction to let them come. Not that you should sit still and feel nothing and perform patience as a strategy, but that the movement, the actual physical, concrete movement of repair is theirs to make, because they are the one who has something to account for, because they are the one whose internal process has not yet been made visible in action. Because showing up with intention, with a genuine reckoning, with something more than partial presence and assumed availability, that is what they owe you. And you are allowed to wait for it fully, without diminishing yourself in the waiting, without filling the space with anything smaller than what you actually want, just to make the silence easier to bear. Something is arriving in this reading that I almost moved past, and I want to stay with it because I think it's the emotional center of what's here. You have loved this person carefully. I don't mean safely. I don't mean with one foot out the door or with your feelings rationed into a prudent amount. I mean you brought your actual self to this. The full version, the version that notices everything, feels things at a depth most people don't access, thinks about the people it loves with a seriousness that sometimes borders on overwhelming because you can't help understanding the complexity of whoever you let yourself actually love. You brought all of that, and somewhere in the course of bringing it, you made yourself more visible than is comfortable for you, more known than you usually allow. You let someone see the parts of you that you protect, not because you were careless, but because something in you decided that this was worth the risk, that this person was worth the exposure. That decision was not wrong. I need to say that plainly because I feel it pressing through the reading with some urgency. The fact that the situation became complicated, that something broke or stalled or moved in a direction that hurt you, does not mean that your original decision to love seriously was a mistake. The mistake was not yours. The decision to open, to bring the real version, to take the risk, was correct. It's the correct choice every time, even when the outcome is painful, because the alternative is a life lived at the surface of everything, and you are not built for the surface. Your love is not a game because you don't know how to play one, not with something that matters, not when you've actually let someone in. That is a feature, not a deficiency. Let me look at what not over actually means in the practical landscape of your situation, because I don't want to leave it as a feeling. I want to give it some shape. What I see when I look at the energy around this connection is something that has the quality of incompletion that precedes resolution rather than incompletion that precedes dissolution. Those are different things, and I want to be careful to distinguish them. Not everything unfinished is going to finish. Not every open wound closes. I'm not in the business of offering comfort that isn't grounded in something real. But this, what I'm looking at here, has the texture of something that has more to say, more to become, a thread that has been dropped rather than a thread that has run out. The person has not arrived at peace with how things stand. I keep returning to that as an anchor point because it matters for the shape of what's coming. People who have genuinely moved on develop a particular quality of settledness around a connection, a completeness, even if it's tinged with sadness, that has the quality of a door fully closed. What I feel around this person is the opposite of that. restlessness where there should be rest, presence where there should be absence, a continued orientation toward you in the privacy of their own interior that is not consistent with something finished. It's not finished. And I want to hold this with you because it's real, not finished. Doesn't mean you have to hold yourself in suspension waiting for it to complete. Not finished means there's still movement available. It does not mean you owe the movement your stillness while it happens. You are allowed to live fully, to be present in your own life, to stop organizing your emotional availability around an unresolved situation, even while the situation continues to develop in its own time. Live forward, not away from this. The connection is real and the depth of it is real, and pretending otherwise would be a different kind of suspension, but forward into your own life, your own expansion, your own continued becoming. From that place of genuine forwardness, you are more rather than less available for what this might become. Because what they need to return to what is actually going to work when they do is not someone who has been standing in one place waiting for them. It's someone who kept moving and can be met finally as a fully present equal. I want to say one last thing about the word realize in this title because it keeps landing for me, and I think it's pointing at something precise. Realize. Not understand, realize, as in to make real, to bring from potential into actuality, to take something that exists only as a possibility or an idea and cause it to exist as a fact. What this person needs to realize in that sense is not new information. They have the information. They know what you offered. They know what they did with it. They know the difference in quality between what they had and what they've had since. All of that is information they already possess. What they need to do is make it real. Move it from the interior where it has been living, acknowledged privately but unacted upon, into the exterior world where it becomes something you can actually respond to, where it counts, where it earns something, because feeling it silently costs them nothing and changes nothing. Coming to you with it showing up accountably with the full weight of what they understand now that costs something. That is the version that is real. That is the version that deserves a response. That is what's coming, not the silent feeling, the made real version, the shown up version, the version where they stop metabolizing this alone in the dark and bring it into the light, where it either becomes something or it doesn't, but at least the uncertainty is finally honest. Let them come. Stay in your own fullness while you wait. Do not shrink toward them to close the distance faster. Do not make it easier than it should be. What is worth having is worth the full walk to your door. Make them walk. The comments are where I want to hear this specifically. Whether you felt that moment about having brought your full self to this, about having made yourself more visible than usual, about the specific cost of loving seriously when the other person wasn't yet capable of meeting that seriously. That's a quiet grief that doesn't always get named. Name it here if it belongs to you. And tell me in whatever words you have, whether you feel the not overness of your own situation, whether it lives in you as knowledge rather than hope. I want to hear the difference.